Hello, and welcome to
Wednesday's Night Out.
with your host, Joseph, Turnpike Plaza 365 Rec Squad. Good to great. Why some companies make the leap and others don't, by Jim Collins, co-author of the best-selling Built to Last. Acknowledgments. To say this book is by Jim Collins overstates the case. Without the significant contributions made by other people, this book would certainly not exist. At the top of the list are members of the research team. I was truly blessed to have an extraordinary group of people dedicated to the project. In aggregate, they contributed something on the order of 15,000 hours of work to the project, and the standard they set for themselves in the quality of their work set a high standard for me to try to live up to. As I struggled with writing the book, I pictured all the hard-working members of the team who dedicated months, in some cases years, to this effort, looking over my shoulder and holding me accountable, challenging me to create a final manuscript that met their standards, worthy of their toil and contribution. I hope this effort meets with their approval. Any failure to reach that standard rests entirely with me. Members of the research team for Good to Great: Brian J. Bagley, Scott Cedarberg, Anthony J. Cherikos, Jenny Cooper, Diane C. Duffy, Eric Hagan, Morton T. Hansen, Lane Hornung, Christine Jones, Scott Jones, Stephanie A. Judd, Brian C. Larson, Wedgie Eve Lee, Nicholas M. Osgood, Vicky Masur Osgood, Allison Sinclair, Peter Van Genderen, Paul Wiseman, Lee Wilbanks, Amber L. Young. In addition, I would like to thank Dennis B. Knock at the University of Colorado Graduate School of Business, who was instrumental in helping me identify and recruit the very best graduate students to join the research team. Getting the right research team members on the bus was the single most important step in making the project successful, and Dennis played a singularly important role in getting a whole busload of great people. Also, at the University of Colorado, I am indebted to Carol Chrisman and her dedicated staff at the Williams M. White Business Library, who patiently worked with members of the research team to locate all sorts of arcane information. In addition to Carol, I would like to acknowledge Betty Grabe, Lynette Liker, Dana McKay, Martha Jo Sinai, and Jean Weiland. I am particularly indebted to a large number of critical readers who invested hours in reading drafts of the manuscript and feeding me the brutal facts about what needed to be improved. Yet, despite sometimes searing and always helpful feedback they continually reinforced by faith in the potential of the project. For their frankness and insight, I would like to thank Kirk Arnold, R. Wayne Boss, Natalie Sharney Roca, Paul M. Cohen, Nicole Toomey Davis, Andrew Finneman, Christopher Foreman, William C. Guerra, Terry Gold, Ed Greenberg, Martha Greenberg, Wayne H. Gross, George H. Hagan, Becky Hall, Liz Heron, John G. Hill, Ann H. Judd, Robert Kaufman, Joe Kennedy, Keith Kennedy, Butch Kersner, Alan Kaisi, Ann Knapp, Bettina Koski, Ken Krankmer, Barbara B. Lawton, Ph.D., Kyle Lefkoff, Kevin Manning, Bill Miller, Joseph P. Monica, Thomas W. Morris, Robert Merlick, John T. Miser, Peter Nosler, Antonia Ozeroff, Jerry Peterson, Jim Reed, James J. Robb, John Rogers, Kevin Ramon, Heather Reynolds, Sager, Victor Zanvito, Mason D. Schoolmaker, Jeffrey L. Senglin, Sina Sementab, Orrin Smith, Peter Studhammer, Rick Sterling, Ted Stolberg, Jeff Tarr, Gene Taylor, Kim Hollingsworth Taylor, Tom Turney, John Vitale, Dan Wardrobe, Mark H. Willis, David L. Weatherow, and Anthony R. Yu. We were very fortunate to have the participation of executives instrumental in the transformation at the Good to Great companies who patiently endured our questions during 1 to 2 hour interviews and at times follow-up conversations. To each of the following people, I would express my hopes that this book captures the best of what you accomplished. Truly, you are the unsung heroes of American business. Robert Aders, William F. Aldinger III, Richard J. Eppert, Charles J. Ashur Jr., Dick Archer, H. David Aycock, James D. Bird, Douglas M. Biddy, Roger E. Burke, Mark C. Breslowski, Eli Broad, Dr. Charles S. Brown, Walter Bruckart, Vernon A. Bruner, James E. Campbell, Fred Canning, Joseph J. Sisko, Richard Cooley, Michael J. Critelli, Joseph F. Coleman III, John A. Doherty, Douglas D. Drysdale, Lyle Everingham, Meredith B. Fisher, B. Fisher, Paul N. Fruit, Andreas Gambler, Milton L. Glass, James G. Grossclaws, Jack Grundhofer, George B. Harvey, James Herring, James D. Halverkeck, Gene D. Hoffman, J. Timothy Howard, Charles D. Hunter, F. Kennedy Iverson, James A. Johnson, L. Daniel Jornt, Robert L. Joss, Arthur Jurgens, Williams E. Kelvey, Linda K. Knight, Glenn S. Crass, Robert J. Levine, Edmund Witters, Littlefield, David O. Maxwell, Hamish Maxwell, Ellen Merlot, Heyman Myers, R.J. Miller, John N. D. Moody, David Nessel, Frank Newman, Arthur C. Nelson Jr., John D. Ong, Dr. Emmanuel M. Pepper, Richard D. Parsons, Derwin Phillips, Marvin A. Pullman, William D. Pratt, Fred Perdue, Michael J. Quinley, George Rathman, Carl E. Reithard, Daniel M. Rexinger, Bill Ravis, Dennis Roney, Francis C. Roney Jr., Wayne R. Sanders, Robert A. Schulhorn, Bernard H. Semler, Samuel Siegel, Thomas F. Skilly, Joseph P. Stiglitz, Joseph F. Turley, Glenn S. Utt Jr., Edward Villanova, Charles R. Walgreens Jr., Charles R. Walgreens III, William H. Webb, George Wiseman, Blair White, William Wilson, Alan L. Wurtzel, and William E. Zerdin. Numerous people from the companies in our research were enormously helpful with arranging interviews and providing us key documents and information. In particular, I would like to note Catherine Babington, David A. Baldwin, Ann Fahey Weidman, and Miriam Welty. Transcript at Abbott Laboratories, Ann M. Collier at Circuit City, John P. DeCulo at Fannie Mae, David A. Foss and Daniel M. Frizzy at Gillette, Tina Berry for her assistance at Kimberly Clark and her insights about Derwin Smith, Lisa Crouch and Angie McCoy at Kimberly Clark, Jack Cornett at Kroger, Terry S. Linsonby and Cornella Wells at Nakura, Stephen C. Parrish and Timothy A. Samposky at Philip Morris, Cheryl Y. Battles and Diane L. Rosso at Pitney Bowes, Thomas L. Moser and Lori L. Meyer at Walgreens, and Naomi S. Haida at Wells Fargo. I would like to give special thanks to Diane Campagno Miller for her help in opening doors at Wells Fargo, John S. Reed for his help in opening doors at Philip Morris, Sharon L. Watso for her help in opening doors at Circuit City, Carl M. Brewer for his insights on Circuit City and generous sharing of his manuscript, James G. Glosson for his Circuit City cases and insights, Karen Lewis for her assistance with Hewlett Packard Company archives, Tracy Russell and her colleagues at the Center for Research in Security Prices for their diligence in ensuring that we had the most current data available, Virginia A. Smith for her helpful guidance, Nick Sager for key beta, Marvin Bressler for his insight and wisdom, Bruce Woolpart for helping me to understand the concept of mechanisms and for his ongoing support, Ruth Ann Begley for her diligent proofreading, Dr. Jeffrey T. Luftig for access to his remarkable brain, Professor William Briggs for his ability to break a complex problem into useful simplicity, Admiral Jim Stockdale for his invaluable teaching, Jennifer Futternick for her inspiration in creating the McKinsey Salon that ignited this project, and Bill Meehan for the initial spark. I would like to make special note of Jerry Perez as my research mentor, James J. Robb as my talented graphics consultant, Peter Ginsberg as my trusted agent and fellow council member in the publishing world, Lisa Berkowitz, who makes magic happen, and Adrian Zakhim, who has enthusiastically believed in and supported this book from the moment he learned of it. Finally, I am deeply thankful for my great good fortune to be married to Joanne Ernest. After 20 years of marriage, she continues to put up with my somewhat neurotic nature and propensity to become consumed with projects such as this one. Not only is she my most helpful critic, but she is also my deepest and most enduring support. The ultimate definition of success in life is that your spouse likes and respects you ever more as the years go by. By that measure, more than any other, I hope to be as successful as she is. Good to Great: Why Some Companies Make the Leap and Others Don't, by Jim Collins, co-author of the best-selling Built to Last. Turnpike Plaza, 365, Rec Squad.